Hi there, this is episode 81 of Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International. My name is Ian Willoughby, and today my guest is climate crisis activist Arne Springorum. Arne is one of the leading members of Last Generation, a protest group who this year have held regular blockades of the through road cutting across central Prague, to the fury of some drivers. Last Generation are pushing for a 30km/h speed limit in the capital, and as we shall soon hear, are not afraid to take radical action to draw attention to the climate crisis. Arne Springorum is from Germany, but he's been living here in Czechia for decades, and he's my guest now in episode 81 of Prague Talk. Arne, many people care about the environment, but few go into that field full time. What were your motivations?
It's a step-by-step process, isn't it? I didn't go into the situation where I'm now from one day to the other. I've known about the climate crisis since the early 90s and had my head in the sand like everyone else. And then when Extinction Rebellion was founded in the UK and I saw the pictures of ordinary citizens getting arrested, I realized I'm one of them. So I stepped up.
Well, you are currently best known as one of the leading members of this Poslední generace, Last Generation. Could you explain to our listeners and readers what is it and what does the organization actually do?
We are a group which is heading into civil resistance to the government, which is a form of protest which is not unheard of. There's ample examples in history about that, like the suffragettes, the civil rights movement, where I see the difference to civil disobedience, where in civil disobedience you do singular acts of civil disobedience, like with Extinction Rebellion we had one big rebellion per year, and in civil resistance it's like one after another. You don't stop, you're always in civil resistance, and you are ready to face prison for that.
But there are so many ways to protest and to make your voice heard. Why take this approach, which for some people could be considered radical?
Oh, it is radical. Absolutely, it is radical. Because it's effective. Every day in Prague there are demonstrations and no one ever hears about them and no one ever cares, especially not politicians. But when we disrupt, and this is one of our main methods, we disrupt, just like Just Stop Oil does in England or Letzte Generation in Germany, we disrupt in an unignorable way. And that way, it becomes a topic for the media, it becomes a topic for society. And that's the democratic part of it. It becomes then a topic for the politicians because of society, societal pressure.
It becomes a topic, but still, what's the connection between it being a topic and you achieving your aims? How do you go from A to B? There's no guaranteed progression from A to B here.
Well, if history tells us something, there is something like a promise. The suffragettes in 1913, they broke all the windows in Oxford Street. And can you imagine the upset to society and how 95 or 99% of all other British women said we have nothing to do with these terrible women who are just destroying property, and 5 years later we got the vote and they are our heroes today.
And you are blocking the main motorway road that runs through Prague?
No, we're not blocking anything. We had legally announced protest marches, and when you march you're not blocking, right? Blocking for me is something else.
Well,
We've done that last year.
Slowing the traffic to the point of it might as well be blocked because people are sitting in their cars waiting to see what happens ahead of them. And that
city highway, as Praguers know, is blocked then, therefore, most of the day. Every morning, every afternoon, it's blocked by its own traffic volume.
You are pushing for the speed limit in Prague to be set at 30km/h everywhere in Prague. Is that correct?
Yeah, because it makes sense. It makes sense, and it's becoming standard in most cities in the West, and it's time that Prague steps up. And there's no arguments against it, really. There really aren't.
Be that as it may, some people will think there are so many issues with the environment, so many things that are in a terrible state. Why is this the hill you're ready to die on?
You're absolutely right. We chose an issue which is absolutely deliverable. And it's a so-called dilemma issue. So either the government or the city government agrees with us, and then we've achieved our goal, and we can show that this works, or they don't, and then we can demonstrate that not even this very simple, easy thing, that Prague actually has already agreed to in the Stockholm Agreement, they are willing to implement, and therefore they are incapable of acting in the time necessary. And of course, this is just our first demand. We will soon have furthers.
How many times have you carried out this kind of protest? And what's your sense of the Prague government responding, or are they responding in any way?
Yeah, they are. They are vilifying us, which is what happens when you do civil resistance. You're being vilified. That happens to Just Stop Oil, and then the state starts with repressions, so there's apparently some...
But how is that a success for you if you're being vilified?
It creates attention. It creates media coverage. It's not about my popularity. I'm not a popular person in the Czech Republic right now. Maybe with the minority I am, but with the majority I'm what they call an eco-terrorist. And it's not about my popularity. I'm not doing this to be popular. I'm doing this to help us survive in the future.
We can say that's clear.
Yeah.
But just for a matter of information, how many times have you done it so far?
Just 17 marches, and now we've paused for the summer.
Is it the case, which I read, that you have glued yourself to the road?
Yes, I did last year with Extinction Rebellion in Prague, but I've done several times in Germany. I'm part of Letzte Generation. I go protest in Germany.
Just as a physical experience, what's that like? What happens when you're stuck?
I mean, come on, this is important, Ian. Billions of people are going to die, and you asking about superglue? Get real. No, this is important. We've spent now 5 minutes talking about, marches, and now you're asking me about glue. It's all over the news. I mean, because of Just Stop Oil, and let's say it's all there. Let's talk about the really important thing. Let's talk about the situation that we're heading into the Czech Republic,
When the traffic is slowed, drivers get angry, and I've seen some videos online of drivers even seeming to drive into protesters. How much danger are you in when you carry out these kind of protests?
It's dangerous. It's a calculated risk, and there's, just with any risk, there's always something can happen. But it's in the context of the so much bigger risk that we're all facing, that our children are facing, our grandchildren, that this is actually absolute necessary to do at this time and time.
Have you or any of your co-members been injured?
Yeah, I broke a rib last year when a driver on the city highway kicked me in the side. And I've been kicked also in Hamburg earlier this year by a driver, which went viral. And I've suffered police violence in Germany and also in the Czech Republic.
What was the form of police violence here?
It's pain grips, which are completely unnecessary because we don't resist. It's passive resistance. And they by law have to use the mildest form of moving us from the street, which is carrying. I mean, I can compare it to the UK, where the police is extremely professional, in my experience, in the public as well as inside the buildings. It's not like that in Germany, and it's not like that in the Czech Republic.
You may say this is also trivial, but I'm still curious. Most people, as they get older, get less radical. They go the opposite direction. They become more conservative. You are in your 50s and you're carrying out these kind of protests that many people would associate with young people. What's driving you to be so radical at your age?
Well, I'm a geologist. I understand the planet and the crisis we're getting into, and I'm devastated. I'm keeping a facade here because actually I feel like crying all the time. I feel like screaming at the top of my lung, can we please wake up and do something? Because we're facing an exponential situation, and humans are not good in exponential situations. We think linear. We think we turn up the temperature and then we turn it down. No, we very soon, within probably months rather than years, we're getting into an area where we cannot turn back.
Do you have any sense of progress, or are you filled with despair?
No, there's progress. But the best image is when you're in an escalator going downhill. We are all on an escalator going downhill. The government is trying to get us off that escalator in the reverse sense, but they're going too slow. So we're actually sinking down. And they are saying with good conscience, but we're moving in the right direction, and they are. And they're saying we are doing more than the previous government, and they are. But actually, the situation is deteriorating every day. And until we start running faster than the escalators going down, it's completely useless what the governments are doing. And this is what we are doing as pressure groups, to get the society to wake up. Because once society, voters demand change, change will come. It won't come just because of a few people gluing themselves to the street. But what we see happening both in the UK and in Germany, and hopefully in the future also in the Czech Republic, society, despite politicians claiming the contrary, society is very much able to differentiate between the method we apply, which is, I think it's fair to say it's despicable, like stopping people on their way to work or even sometimes on their way to a hospital. I have no satisfaction whatsoever in it. But they're able to differentiate, and say, okay, we don't like what this group is doing, but their demands and the climate crisis, that's something where the government is actually failing us. And if that reaches critical mass, the government will act, and that's why we're doing it.
Do you mind me asking, I saw an interview with you in which you said there was disagreement within your own family over your approach. Could you elaborate on that?
It's private. I got family members who are very much against what I'm doing, and I won't go into detail. And it's the biggest pain in my life.
What do you think about people who vandalize SUVs?
It's not something I would do, because we in last generation, we might actually do property damage, but we would stay there until the police arrives. We stay with integrity. We say we've done this and we will bear the consequences. So we don't do any activities in the middle of the night and run away. That's not our way of doing things. However, I understand that people are getting more and more desperate, and I think we will see more of that. Because it's true, people who buy big SUVs, they have a bigger share in the problems that we're creating, especially rich people. And so they should be aware that we're moving into uncertain times, and when society collapses, and we are heading for that right now, the richest people will be targeted first. So there's a reason why they're building their bunkers in New Zealand.
I should have asked you this earlier. Maybe I kind of touched on it, but was there one moment for you personally where you said, "Okay, this is it. I have to devote all my energy to this cause"?
No, it's a slow progression into that awareness, and it's an ongoing fight. It's an ongoing fight, because I'm a family father. I used to be a entrepreneur. I had a company. I feel lots of responsibilities towards the things I've been doing, and yet I cannot do them all. I cannot divide myself. So it's an ongoing struggle of prioritizing. Do I take care of my 16-year-old daughter, or do I protest and go to prison so that she has a future? That's a dilemma I cannot resolve, actually.
How many members does Poslední generace have?
Oh, we're just a handful, maybe 15, 20.
And
but, the important thing is 15, 20 people is absolutely enough to do 3-4 roadblocks in Prague, which creates the publicity that the topic needs.
Since I became kind of interested in politics as a teenager, I have always felt that there are very worthy causes that are not served best by the people who are promoting those causes. Sometimes they use methods that maybe work against the cause that they are championing. Is there not a danger that regular people in Prague, motorists or non-motorists, will see what you're doing and will be more anti-environmental activist than pro? They will be more angry than inspired to make a change?
Well, you're right. They will be anti-environmental activists. They will be anti-environmental activism. But they won't be anti, getting a future for themselves and their kids. They might not admit that. We're pushing their noses into this topic, and that's nothing nice. But actually, because we're raising the interest, they will read the articles, they will gain a bigger understanding, and this is proven by sociology, that actually this does work and society does shift, actually. They don't become radical and start blocking the street with us. But they will pay more attention to the issue, and the issue will be more written about by the media. And in the end, it will not be about which method did we employ to glue our hands to the road. It will be about the government failing us, and all governments failing us to provide a livable future for us and for many other living beings on this planet.
Ultimately, how likely do you think your group is to actually achieve something?
I think it's likely because society is coming around. Nature is helping big time. The climate records, things are deteriorating. It's faster than everyone expected. It will be faster. This is exponential. So for me, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And what I'm doing, what my job is to make sure that the when is earlier. And if it's at the cost of me going to prison or having problems with some family members or, destroying some of my friend relationships, that's all worthy the cause. It's about our survival, and if you haven't understood that, now I'm addressing the listeners, you better, start reading about it and then start acting. It doesn't matter what you do. You can send money, you can do some changes, but at this point, it's not about individual change. It's about system change. We need to do systemic changes to overcome the crisis we're in. We're moving deeper in day by day.
Arne Springorum from the group Last Generation, who I spoke to at Radio Prague Studios in Vinohrady in August 2023. This has been episode 81 of Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International. So it hardly needs to be said that there are scores more editions out there for you to listen to. Why not check out a few and follow Prague Talk wherever you get podcasts. For now, that's all from me, Ian Willoughby. Thank you so much indeed for listening to Prague Talk, and talk to you again very soon.